few weeks ago I did a video about feedback, and one of you wonderful people suggested in the comments that I should listen to an artist called Toshimaru Nakamura. This is an artist who's specifically known for a technique called NIMB, the No Input Mixing Board. And I figured, well, this is going to be very difficult to listen to. And so I started to dig, and I found things like this. And things like this. And my first reaction, and maybe yours as well, is like, whoa, that's freaking weird, right? But I found that this, over time, had a very strange impact on me. In fact, it put me in a headspace that really opened up my mind to just pure sound. In an interview, Toshimaru says, when I'm making music, I'm not trying to express emotions at all. It's a pure exploration of sound. And what's more, it is a sort of a form of discipline of surrendering yourself to the machine, because the machine will make very unpredictable sounds, and you just have to accept that. You can't be perfect at understanding exactly what the machine is going to do, because it's a weirdly complex, non-linear system. You might have heard of the term ambient music, which was a term coined by Brian Eno. When he was making these stable ambient soundscapes, he thought of it as music that puts you in a mindset of surrender. And that gets echoed by techno legends like Surgeon when he discusses his approach to doing a live set. To a certain extent, he says he surrenders to the machines. And then he says, maybe I'm revealing a bit much about myself here, as if surrendering yourself to the sound is a bad thing or somehow a shameful thing. But no, in music, there is a very specific skill called learning to listen, which is about opening your senses to the pure sound without loading it with too much meaning, just listening purely to the sound, like walking through the forest and looking at nature. And that's what this is about to me. You can think of it as a form of sound meditation. There is someone called Pauline Oliveros that I would also really recommend. Her concept of deep listening goes in on this very much. But if you clicked on an underdog video, you probably want a tutorial of some sort. So let's do it. Let me explain what I'm doing here and then also show it to you in Ableton, because you don't actually need tools to do it. First things first, protect your ears. Everything we're going to do in this video has the potential of actually deafening you, and I'm not joking. So do be ultra careful. Think of this as a system that you're going to create extreme noise inside, and then the entire system, you can turn it down either with a limiter or simply through the limitations of what the thing can send out. Think of it like a storm in a bottle, and you only let a little bit out into your ears, okay? But don't go stand in the middle of the storm, because it will deafen you. And it's merciless, and it goes from 0 to maximum faster than you can move. So you need to be very careful. If you're doing it in hardware or in software, it doesn't matter. Just be super, super careful. This whole system, I'm recording it on a little Zoom recorder, and I'm listening through the headphone jack here, but look at where the volume is. This is completely off, and this is like where I'm going to be listening, like at, less than 1, because up here it's going to be deafening. It's going to absolutely blow out my ears. So I need to listen to it at tiny amounts, and even when it gets quiet, never ever be tempted to turn it up, because if you turn it up and then it goes back to its own maximum, it's going to deafen you. I know this is boring, but honestly, it's worth it if you can maintain your hearing for the rest of your life. Okay, so the idea is the no input mixing board. This mixing board has nothing connected to its inputs. These are 2 outputs for the recording it, and for the rest, no inputs at all. And so what we're going to do is we're going to work with the send and return channels, because they can basically feedback on themselves. You can send number 1 back to number 1, and number 2 back to number 2, and number 1 to number 2, and number 2 to number 1. And so you can create a complex system of 2 channels that are interacting with each other and that are forever sending things backwards and forwards between them. And we're going to mess with volume, we're going to mess with the EQ, and that's going to be enough to create a wonderful soundscape. So what do I need to do? I need to connect the send out to the return A. Doing that, boom, has instantly created chaos. Let me listen. Notice when I start to listen, I'm not going to stand in the bottle of the storm. I first listen from a distance and go, okay. So with just 1 channel, see this, how it goes from nothing It's a chaotic sound that reacts in ways you wouldn't expect, because I'm just tweaking the volume, but it's creating a periodic cycle of which the pitch moves. And I don't pretend that I fully understand what's going to happen. But look, anything that I tweak has an impact. Why is it doing that? No one knows. Someone might know, but I don't. This is fun and cute and cool, but things get super wild when we have two channels interacting, because then it creates a chaotic system that it just becomes a joy to explore for a long time. So let's do that. Let's hook up the other one. Send number 2 goes to return B. And now both of these are working in mono, so that's going to be fairly simple. But we could also connect more cables to connect left to right and right to left to create some weird stereo stuff. Okay, so now we've got 2 channels. Now, let's see what they can do together. There we go. Notice that there's an interesting little overtone, a little flutter that starts to happen. So your job is like a gardener, to walk through the garden and notice interesting flowers that are growing, and then to nurture those flowers or to just tend to them. Because you can't fully control this. You can just invite cool things in and they'll show up and disappear as they want to. Oh! It's like a little bird has arrived in our garden. Ooh. Sometimes moving something away and moving it back will create the old equilibrium, and sometimes not. This is a dynamic nonlinear system, so that means that sometimes you hit a point that you can't come back from, a catastrophic point of some sort. We've hit such a catastrophic point right now. I don't know what happened, but we're in a new universe, and it's up to us to just exist here and explore. Maybe we're on a motorbike. I'm not doing anything, right? It sounds like I am. I'm coexisting with the creature. This is so wild. What is happening? Sometimes you think you start to get an intuition for what various knobs are gonna do. And then stuff happens that you just can't explain. It's like you're meeting aliens and they're trying to communicate with you. But all you can do is just look at it and go, what does this all mean, man? What's going on? Why is this suddenly a very techno beat? I have no idea. But I'm having a good time. I know in a YouTube video the idea is to be short and snappy with the video, but this process gets better the more time you take. The more you get lost in a sound, the more you just pause to reflect on what you're hearing and enjoy what you're hearing, it gets deeper and it gets better. It's hard to communicate that now in a video that doesn't last for an hour, but take my word for it and try some of this for yourself. See, I could rush through this, or I could pause and appreciate it. This has a deepness and a freshness. It's crisp like a rainstorm or crickets in the trees. But it's full like a chord almost. There's so much for the ear to hold on to here. And I'm recording it so I have it as material to edit as audio later, right? If I want. As if this wasn't enough in itself, a logical next step could be to include something in the signal chain. Let's try that. Now I've put it in the path of the first one. Already we're getting some kind of behavior. Interesting. Now my goal is not to have it sound like a delay pedal. My goal is to explore the pure sonics of it. Feel it evolving? I'm not doing anything. Okay, let's bring in the second channel and see how wild it's gonna get. Those tipping points are very satisfying. It can get too chaotic, so sometimes there's a beauty in just waiting and trying to appreciate, even though not much is happening, but there's always something of interest. So that was sound composition using the no input mixing board technique. It's more like a sound meditation that takes time to get into, so there's a limit to how satisfying this is going to seem over social media, but in real life, trust me, it's freaking satisfying. But you don't need hardware to do this. Let me show you in Ableton. Now, in Ableton Live, we can effectively do the exact same thing. We can use return channels that feed back onto themselves. So you right-click, you go Insert Return Track, and we're going to call this NIMB 1, No Input Mixing Board 1. Now, the moment you send this back to itself, there's a risk of this thing pinning itself to the absolute maximum volume here. And that's freaking loud, especially in digital. It's about as loud as your computer can go. It's going to go to the maximum. Also on the master here, it's going to go to the maximum. So you have two tools at your disposal. One is a limiter. On the master, you're going to have a limiter just to make sure that it doesn't go much above 0 decibels. And then you also have the master fader, which you can bring down, and that's the equivalent of taking the storm that's in a bottle and letting only a little bit of the storm out, okay? I repeat, this can cause ear damage if you are not careful, so be careful. Here, let's put this way down while we set this thing in motion. To set this thing in motion, we right-click, we do Enable Sends, and we feed it back onto itself. Now we've created potentially a bomb because all it needs is one tiny bit of audio to set this thing in motion, but because it's a perfectly digital system, there's perfect digital silence, so there's nothing for it to feed back onto itself just yet. In analog systems, that's different because there's always a bit of a noise floor. In digital, not so. So how do we create a little bit of sound on here? I don't know, be creative. You can make a sound over here, for example, and send it there for just a moment. Or you could put an effect on there that's maybe even easier. Or for example, we could put a tiny bit of vinyl distortion on there. Now, see that? We've created a monster. But we can't hear it because we have full control. But what you wouldn't want is this 40 decibels louder smacking you in the ear. Not good. So you have to control the volume and set it to a volume that feels okay for you. Let's leave it here for now. In the room, this feels fine. And because we're already pinned to the maximum, it's not going to get louder than this. Look at this limiter. 60 decibels of gain reduction. See, if I even remove the limiter. Nope. Not good. Keep your hand on the volume control for your monitors as well, because yeah, this is a bad time. Let's turn a bad time into a good time by starting to explore. We can start experimenting with seeing what kind of things we can put in the feedback chain to sculpt this sound. And after that, we can create a second return channel to increase the complexity of this system, right? Cool. Look at this beauty. Now, let's put a little EQ on there. Reduce some of these ultra highs. I find that feedback systems are very sensitive to how much high mids or lows you send there. Sometimes when one of them gets overwhelming, you can just push it down. And then the center of gravity of this feedback system will move towards the lows, for example. Which I find more interesting. Because look, if you bring up the highs, boom! Catastrophically, it goes all the way up to the highs. Now, we gotta be real careful bringing up the volume, right? Because we remember it can jump again. Gotta be super careful. Beauty. Oh, look at all these harmonics. Look at that richness. A little bit of LFO. Whoa. So much to explore here. One of the biggest joys is having very few elements in the signal chain and explore them deeply. You could stack loads of different things, that's fine, but there's a sort of a paralyzing abundance of options here in the digital world. It costs no energy. So it's more fun to have less elements and to explore them deeply. See what's happening? For me, just moving an EQ around. Because of the chaotic nature of this system, you can't pretend to fully know what's going to happen. So that puts you in a state of mind of play and exploration. That's wonderful. And just in case you hit some sweet spots, you're not going to be able to reproduce them. So maybe it's best to record them. You take audio from resampling, you hit record, and you hit record. That was a beautiful sound. Can I do it again? It's like an alien dog wanted a treat and you said, no, you can't have a treat, and it goes, oh. So nice. So I'm glad I caught this by recording it. And so I can now use this as a sample. I can put this into an archive or something, use it later, come up with material for myself by being playful here. Why is it doing all of these things? I don't know. Non-linear chaotic systems. Maybe this is a moment to reflect on life, society, the bigger patterns of our existence, our big feedback system, right? And it's very complicated. And we think very linearly. We think cause and effect. But life and society and history is more like this. You reach a weird inflection point and things go completely out of balance and you don't necessarily understand why. I know I was filming a video, but now I've been sitting here for 5 minutes just listening to this thing. Let's add a touch of reverb, see where we end. Do you start to see what I mean when I say surrender? This thing is bigger than you. You're just a gardener. The garden will outlast the gardener. In some weird way, this is the universe talking to itself, and we just get to witness it. Now, to make this tutorial complete, I don't think this needs it, but we can create a second channel. Enable all the sends, enable all the sends. And so now you can send this one to this one and this one back to this one. And Lord knows what that extra complexity is going to do to this. So let's create a mess here. And send it back. We can also try unlikely devices like a glue compressor and see if they impart some kind of a sound. One thing I'm noticing is that gain in short feedback systems turns into pitch because of the periodic nature of it. Well, I can pretend to understand it, but I'm never fully in control. And when you go full infrasonic, when you've got loads of these frequencies, it becomes more periodic in terms of rhythm, simply because you're getting waveforms that are so large that they choke out the sound and create rhythm. And that's the concept of no input mixing board music composition. On the surface level, it seems like a trick that you can do with some hardware, but once you start to reflect on it, it's an entire paradigm or philosophy of music that includes concepts like surrender, nonlinear dynamics, chaos theory, feedback, and just acceptance and contemplation of pure sound. And honestly, I'm super grateful that it opened those doors in my mind. Please let me know in the comments any more recommendations or ideas or artists that trigger these kind of thoughts for you, because I want to follow all the way down the rabbit hole. So please give me all the good stuff. If you like the way I teach, maybe go follow one of the Underdog courses. And until next time, stay producing, be good to each other, and take care. Bye bye.